why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Professor Burton?
I've been at Whittier for, I'm in my 12th year at Whittier. I previously taught at West Virginia University. I taught in New York City. I taught in Washington, D.C., and I taught overseas in Lahore, Pakistan for a while as well. My research area is like Shakespeare and Renaissance drama, but I do things with Shakespeare and Renaissance drama that are probably wildly different from what you may have seen done in high school. I also am someone who went to a small liberal arts college as an undergraduate themselves, and it was my dream to get to teach at one. I also got to teach at one that looks like California, which I think is like one of the most exciting things about working at Whittier College and working with the students at Whittier College. And as I was chair of the department up until this year, and in that role, I kind of shepherded in a whole new curriculum that also, like, for English majors, that also looks more like California and Californians. And we have two poets on staff who are phenomenal and really interested in totally different things in poetry. So one of my colleagues, Tony Barnstone, his latest project is this actual deck of cards, like tarot cards, that are supposed to kind of generate creativity and help you to produce poetry. He's teaching a course this semester called Creativity, and that class is right after one of my classes. So I'm always checking in with those students to find out, like, what are you doing in creativity? Because, like, we all want to be more creative, right? And my other colleague in poetry is Douglas Manuel, who is he's currently on leave. He's on parental leave. He has a new baby, but he'll teach. Like, one of his classes is called The Poetics of Hip Hop. And you study like contemporary hip hop and look at the ways in which contemporary hip hop artists actually kind of deploy some like long poetic traditions in their work. And students get to bring in the music that they love into those classes, and the class together kind of works out, like, how does this get put together, right? Like, what is poetry? Like, how do we distinguish between something that's poetic and something that isn't also, right? Why did Kendrick Lamar win the Pulitzer Prize, right? Like, how does hip hop get to be elevated to that sort of level? They're both kind of phenomenal poets, and they create lots of opportunities for their students to not only to write poetry, but also to get their poetry published, and also to give readings on campus when they're comfortable doing that. Awesome. Well, like, creative writing is a really important kind of core element in the English major. But the way in which our major is structured, they're actually it's all about choice, right? Like, we want you to kind of be in the English major that most interests you. So ours is not a major that says, like, you have to read you have to read Chaucer, though our Chaucerian Sean Morris is one of the funniest people you will ever meet, so you might want to. But we won't ever say like this is an author you have to take, or this is what great literature looks like. So just like as a kind of overview, the English major has 3 different tracks you can choose from. There's a literature track, a creative writing track, and an applied media studies track. But you can also kind of dabble, right? If you feel like I'm interested in doing all of these things, that's also a possibility. There's a lot of flexibility within the major right now. I'm gonna take you guys through a few slides about like what does the English major look like at Whittier, and you're gonna see that students in my Shakespeare classes will do some things that you might have seen before, right? Like, sure, we do close reading. Sure, there's some performance elements as well. But above all, what students in my classes do is they make meaning with Shakespeare. Like, they don't bow down at the altar of Shakespeare. Instead, they think, how can I make Shakespeare my, well, you know, a word I might say here, but I'll hold off, right? Like, how can I make meaning with Shakespeare? What can I deploy Shakespeare to do that's relevant to my life and my world, right? Shakespeare's been around for 400 years. It's like the meaning of those texts changes everywhere it goes, right? So we're not only interested in the meaning of the text in, say, 1594. We're interested in the meaning of the text at that moment. We might look at the meaning of the text in like 19th century America. We might look at it like in kind of interwar America, like in the moments where you have like the rise of fascism in the world as well. Like, how did a play like Julius Caesar come to mean something very different in light of the rise of like Mussolini and Hitler, for example? But we also look at Shakespeare in you know, in like today, and we think about like, what is Shakespeare? How does the meaning of Shakespeare change when people from different backgrounds, people in different bodies are performing it and using it to make meaning? I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to bring up some slides to kind of try to give you guys a fuller, richer sense of what English at Whittier looks like.
Well, Professor Burton set that up. All this talk about poetry reminded me of Professor Barnstone's trip to the Poetry Festival in San Miguel de Allende, Guanajuato. I don't know if that'll ever return, but that's a big part of, you know, that's some of the cool stuff that students at Whittier get to do, is faculty plan these learning trips abroad. And Tony Barnstone has taken students to Guanajuato to write poetry for like 2 weeks or like 10 days. They'll go out there and just write and be inspired by their surroundings.
I've done a class like that where we've gone to New York and gone to in a week we went to 11 different performances, which was kind of amazing. Like, whoever sees that much theater in that kind of time. I'm thinking about it, a trip to London, and my colleague Sean Morris has done this Canterbury Tales trip where you read Chaucer's Canterbury Trails and then do the trip that the Canterbury Pilgrims do in that story as well. So this first slide is English majors. Like, this is what English majors look like at Whittier College. And you can see on that top image, you know, that they are like entirely integrated with us, with the faculty, right? The image that's just at a beginning of the year gathering that we had, and the one at the bottom is the senior dinner. So every year in the spring we have a senior dinner with our graduating majors. There are lots of kind of moments in between those two, but I think it gives you a sense of the kind of warmth of the community, and how much we like just have each other's backs at Whittier. So
I want to get invited to that this year. Okay, please invite me to your send off at the brewing company.
Count on it. So this is what I was talking about earlier, that there are kind of three paths through the major. And what that means is that you can choose a path that's focused on kind of literary works, right? If you love to read and are less of a creator, right, you might choose the literature path. You might choose this creative writing path. Those who are interested in media studies, and here we have classes that look at podcasting. We have classes, a class called New Media Narratives. We have a class in game design, where you look at the way kind of board games and video games are designed using the tools of the English major, like narrative, storytelling, and conflict, and so on. But in all of these, what you can see a couple of shared elements, and those are, like, if you can see in each of them, you can see the classes critical procedures and editing and publishing emerging media, and then senior seminar. Those things appear in all of them. And part of the point of this is we want our students to have a cohort experience, right? We want them to move through the major and not feel like, oh, the other, maybe that person's an English major. I don't know who the English majors are, right? So there are these moments when it's just you and the other English majors, right? And you come to have a real sort of community. I'm currently teaching one of those classes now, and I just on Sunday went to UCLA to see a play with a bunch of them, and it was glorious. And we came back, and we're laughing about our experience. It was one of these plays where the audience kind of becomes the cast. So everyone was feeling like initially vulnerable, and then really kind of happy to have gone through this thing with the other people. So, and if you can switch to the next one now. One of the things that we really emphasize is experiential learning, right? We feel like if you are just reading a book, you aren't necessarily going to be kind of living the experience, right? So here are images, like you can see that the top one is from this class on Melville and Whitman, right? And so when they were reading Herman Melville's Moby Dick, they actually went on a whale watching trip. I teach a transcultural literature class. We were reading a novel about immigrants in New York City who come together to play cricket together, and we were talking about it in class, and it became very quickly apparent that like nobody really understood, like, what is this game, cricket? How does it work? Like, so I went out and bought a cricket set, and in our next class we played cricket together to have a better understanding of what this novel was about. Okay, next slide. So these are from my colleague Sean Morris's class, Robin Hood Through the Ages, right, where they look at the Robin Hood myth in different moments historically, and they they not only do they actually kind of learn some of these fighting skills that come up in Robin Hood, they also do a raid on another class, like like picking, and that's usually arranged in advance with the professor of that other class, but the students in the other class have no idea it's coming. So it's a really fun moment. Next slide. This is work that comes out of one of my Shakespeare classes. So I told you that that we will do things in my Shakespeare classes that don't look like things that you might have seen before. Here, students take a page from one of Shakespeare's plays. In this case, these are all from Romeo and Juliet, and they do what's often referred to as blackout poetry, right? Where that you black out everything except the words that you want to remain and make new meaning with. And what you see here is that my students are doing it in much more interesting ways than just kind of scratching things off. They were drawing and painting over the work. They were collaging over it. You can see the one in the bottom right-hand corner. That student took a particular image and then just cut out, right? Like that student didn't have the same kind of artistic skills that some of these other students had, but produced this phenomenal work that was about a kind of mother-daughter relationship. The one on the lower left hand, right, has a more kind of sexually aggressive version of Juliet, right? Like they were resisting the notion that that like the man always has to be the one who is the wooer. So here's what I was talking about when I was saying kind of making meaning with Shakespeare. Right? That's one example. This slide gives you a sense of like some of the other classes that we teach. I've mentioned some of these, but others I haven't. This is only like a sampling of them, and so some are kind of new, like the horror class is being taught for the first time this semester. That From Black Arts to Black Lives Matter has only been taught once so far, and it's going to come back next fall, I believe. So we have the graphic novel, science fiction, then a class on why you love Marvel, right? And it looks at kind of Marvel heroes and kind of archetypes of the hero from earlier literary models. So I'll go on to the next one. These are selections from my graphic novel class. So students read these, and one of the things that that you might not be able to see here is from these, unless you knew all these works, is that we're really interested in presenting in working with the works of diverse authors, right? So so whether that's a queer narrative like Fun Home, a Latinx narrative like My Favorite Thing is Monsters, an African American narrative like Kindred, right? The English major is not a study of dead white men, is what I'm saying here. Next one, please. These are the covers of the Greenleaf Review, our literary magazine, and these are recent editions of it. Inside is poetry, short stories, and artwork by our students, and this gets produced out of one of our classes, the publishing and editing class. So students take on different roles. So take on different kind of editorial roles in that class, and learn all about the publishing process. Next one. And then the last thing I wanted to address is this question a lot of people have about, like, well, what exactly will I do after college if I'm an English major? This slide gives you, like, indicates like the broadest range that you can imagine, really. But I think it might be more telling if I took you through some of our recent graduates and what they're doing. Gabriel Perez is now a community organizer. Adam Pava is a writer for Warner Brothers. Floyd Chung is a professor. Yasmin Mendoza is in graduate school to become a professor. Angel Alcantar is a high school teacher. Ariana Juarez is in a publishing program at NYU. Rosalie Atkinson is a podcast producer. Kiana Garcia is a marketing editor. We have lawyers. We have politicians. Actually, really, English majors do everything. Is what I'm saying here. So I think that's my last slide. Let me just open the floor now to, so maybe you can stop, we can stop the screen sharing. There we go. And I'll take any questions you might have. So first of all, I'll say that we have a lot of students that double major in English and theater. So this is something that's like, we wouldn't have to figure it out for you. This is a well-paved road. Right now I have 3 students in one of my classes who are both double majors in English and theater, right? And theater, our theater major has kind of multiple tracks through it as well, right? Those students can study like acting, directing, scenic design. There's also like a film track through the theater major as well. So that overlap is quite commonplace, actually. So and we got lots of double majors in various combinations, right? I recently had English and poli-sci majors, English and psych majors. I currently have one who's an English physics double major, actually, right? So that's a more rare one. Currently I have an English and business administration major, right? And that student is focusing on marketing, and their work has been so interesting to the professor of marketing that that professor said, like, I got to create more classes that don't have prereqs for English majors because I want more English majors in my marketing classes.
That makes perfect sense. Professor Burton, I wonder, why do so many Whittier students double major?
Because there's room to. Nothing in our curriculum is going to take up too much room, right? Like the total number of credits to graduate at Whittier, and this is a kind of standard figure that you'd find in a lot of places. It's 120 credits. Most majors are around 36 credits, right? That's certainly true of the English major, right? You would also have like core curriculum credits to do. That's usually somewhere around the same as a major, right? But if that's the case, that only brings you to 72 right there, right? 72 of 120. So adding a second major is really easy, especially because some of the classes from your majors would count within the core curriculum, will be satisfying core curriculum stuff. We just in this December graduated a student who was a triple major in English, poli-sci, and French. So double major, not a problem.
That's amazing. Anybody else have questions?
Or, if you have questions about like just life at Whittier, I'm happy to answer some of those as best I can too.
Professor Burton, I often run into you in the while our participants come up with some questions. I often run into you at the dining hall, and I find that to be such an important and great part of life on campus at Whittier. That's where you sort of run into friends. But tell us why you shared this with me the other day, why you like to eat in the dining hall.
I like that's a chance for me to get to know my students, right? The food's pretty good at Whittier too, actually. So that's important to know. But I also like it's such a great place to like lower the stakes, right? Like we don't have to talk about assignments. We don't have to talk about my class at all, right? Like last night I was at a Whittier women's basketball game, right? And like today I was in our campus inn, the dining hall, and I saw one of the women's basketball players who had scored 31 points in the game, right? So I went over to fist bump her. That's what our community is like, right? Like my daughter is currently a college freshman, and she couldn't go to college where her dad worked, right? And she ended up at a big university, and she has no interaction with her professors outside of the very moment the class begins and the moment the class ends, right? That's like, it's all contained within there. But Whittier professors are in the dining hall. They might come to your games. If you're in a performance, they might come to your theater performance, right? If you were one of the students who contributed to the literary magazine, the Greenleaf Review, and you're giving a reading at the end of the year, professors are going to be there as well. So it's a really kind of special place, and that's in part my answer to about like what drove us to work at Whittier. For me, it has to do with being in a community, right? Above all, but it's also the kind of community that Whittier is. For one thing, I taught for 12 years at West Virginia University, and I had some great students at West Virginia University, but I'm also a professor whose research is on race, and that was a really homogeneous community, and my family is a mixed race family. It was important for us to be in a place where being mixed is run of the mill, and being mixed is what Whittier is all about, right? It's where America is going to, right? So it's important to think of you want to be in a space that looks like America and where America is going, right? And that's certainly the case with with Whittier College, right?
Yeah. I love working at Whittier. All in, I've worked in higher education, on college campuses for about 13 years. Um, but there's, I love to learn. I love to learn, and for someone who's a lifelong learner, there's no better place to work than a place like Whittier College. Um, so that's why I work there. It's the kind of place where learning is cool. You know what I mean? Like it's not like high school, and it's not like the big schools where with parties all the time, and it's not cool to like go to class and do your homework. No, I get here at Whittier, it's everyone likes to learn, and no one's embarrassed to have study groups, and that's actually part of the social life at Whittier, is just getting together to work on projects and do homework and study.
Yeah, and what that means day to day in the classroom is that people take chances, right?
Hmm.
Because they know it's safe to take chances, right? And when you know it's safe to take chances, you are a much more creative thinker, right?
Yeah.
And you live a more creative life as a result of that, right? Like, you heard me earlier say that, we will have your back at Whittier, but it's also really important to know that like your peers will have your back at Whittier.
Hmm.
Like Whittier students are kind, like they are open, so if what attracted me to Whittier at first was um, was what the campus community looked like. What makes me love working at Whittier is the students, um, because the students are so thoughtful, so creative, really great at working collaboratively with one another. It is just a joy to be in a classroom at Whittier College.
If she says she saw well-behaved dogs are allowed on campus and in class, does that include the dorms? And specifically, are emotional support animals allowed to live with students on campus? You want to
I
speak
know
to
the
that?
answer to that. The answer to that question is yes. Um, and we have had students with dogs on campus. I've had I don't live on campus, but Dingo comes with me from time to time, and even comes into class with me periodically, right? Like, um, but professors often have dogs that they bring to campus. It's really fun
Yeah.
because periodically you'll see the upper quad will have like, sometimes like 4 or 5 dogs playing together on it. It looks like a little dog park at times.
Yeah, yeah. We want to hear more from you guys. Any other questions?
What about this? What if I put you in touch with one of my colleagues in theater? I am certain that one of them would be willing to either do a like one-on-one Zoom with you, or if you didn't want to do that, if that felt like too much, I could just have them email you. We can do whatever you're comfortable with, but I am certain that do you know, like, are you most interested in acting, directing? What's your okay? I will. Do you know how to find my email? Well, actually, I know how you can find my email. Here it comes. There it is. You have my email now. So you can send me an email. It doesn't have to have like don't worry about having like a formal content in it, right? And I'll put you in touch with one of my colleagues in theater. This is how a small college works, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't just like um, it isn't just like, oh, I missed an opportunity, I never have that opportunity again. It's, we're going to make that opportunity for you, right? You're important to us, and like, we're going to make things happen.
For sure.
I have
Are you,
students who come in for, who are my advisees from time to time, and and they'll say, oh, I decided I'm not really that interested in this particular course. I would love to get into this other one, but it looks like it's full. I don't know what to do. And I often I'll walk over to that with them to that professor's office, and we'll say, hey, can you add one more? And Whittier professors pretty much always say yes. That's our way. Great question.
that's a great question. So we do have a counseling center on campus, as you know. You, I think they usually have about 6 counselors, 7 counselors on staff. And so appointments can get booked very quickly. But starting this academic year, Whittier College rolled out teletherapy services for all Whittier students, and that's included in your tuition. So you're able to meet with someone virtually, whether it's you just need to talk to someone, you're having trouble coping with something and need to talk it out, or whether you need some sustained therapy sessions, that's available. We have a really good support system at Whittier, with the Dean of Students Office, Student Life, the counseling center, student accessibility services. They're all in touch with each other, and so are professors, right? And so professors are really, really good at looking out and noticing patterns. And I joke, but it's, you can't be anonymous at Whittier. If you're absent to class and there's a pattern of absences, your professors are going to know and notice, and they're going to let someone know, and ask folks to check up on you. So there's a good support system. There is a counseling center. There is no limit. You know what? I don't want to say that, because I don't know if it's maybe 10 sessions for the academic year. I don't know the limit on sessions, but you do have access to therapists in person on campus, and access to therapy services virtually, anytime you need them.
I think we could probably get you a precise answer to that question as well. We can easily reach out to our director of the counseling center, Rebecca Romberger, who is phenomenal. I saw her at the women's basketball game last night, in fact. So we can get that. If this is another thing where you've got my email address. If you want me to get you precisely that information, I can help you.
Like he said, we're available to answer any questions via email. We're not hard to find at all. But I think if that's it, if there are no more questions, we'll say good night.
And I actually visited your high school a few years back, right? I mentioned that I mentioned that I'm a Shakespeare scholar, that's my area of research, and I also mentioned that that my research is on race. And the most recent publication of mine came out in a journal called Shakespeare Quarterly just last month, actually, is about the teaching of Shakespeare in the most segregated schools in Los Angeles County.
All right. Any final questions, you guys, before we disconnect and call it a night? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, this recording will be available on the English department webpage. soon. And in the meantime, you know, and between now and the time that you make a decision or start applying to colleges, feel free to reach out, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Nice to meet you all.
Good night.
Good night.